A poor single mom unknowingly helped a lonely millionaire escape a terrible blind date. Little did she know the CEO was about to fall for her. The winter wind rattled the tall windows of the upscale restaurant, but inside everything glowed with warmth. Chandeliers shimmered above velvet booths, and waiters glided past tables with silver trays balanced effortlessly. Emma Wells tightened the knot of her apron and tucked a loose strand of blonde hair behind her ear. She had picked up the evening shift for one reason: Sam's third birthday was just days away. The fire truck toy he desperately wanted, complete with real sirens and flashing lights, was far beyond her budget. Another double shift she hoped might change that. At table 9 near the large frosted window, a man sat alone. Daniel Archer wore a simple navy shirt, no watch, and no designer labels. He had arrived early and ordered only a glass of water and the roasted chicken. He looked out of place in a room filled with curated appearances and platinum cards, yet he seemed completely at ease. As Emma passed his table while delivering drinks, their eyes met. He nodded, offering a small, polite smile, not flirtatious, which she liked. 10 minutes later, she saw her. The blind date. A tall brunette in a designer coat with a fur-lined collar that probably cost more than Emma's rent. The woman moved like someone used to attention, but when she saw Daniel, her expression fell. "Oh, you're Daniel?" she asked, unable to hide her disappointment. He stood and offered a hand. "Yes, nice to meet you." She didn't take it, just sat and opened the menu with a sigh. Emma wasn't trying to listen, but as she walked past, she caught their conversation. "You ordered chicken and water," the woman said loudly. "Seriously, I thought this was a real restaurant." Daniel's voice was calm. "It is. I just prefer simple meals." The woman scoffed. "Right, trying to look humble. It just screams cheap." She tilted her head, smug. "Let me guess. Tech guy, pretending to be self-made but scraping by." Daniel said nothing, but Emma saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. Then came the spill. The woman waved her hand in irritation, her wine glass tipped, soaking Daniel's shirt. "Oh my God," she groaned. "This night is cursed." Emma rushed over, cloth napkin in hand, crouching to blot Daniel's shirt. He nodded in silent thanks. The woman sneered. "I bet you're used to this kind of mess. You two probably shop at the same discount store." Emma rose slowly, holding the wet napkin. Her cheeks flushed, but her voice stayed steady. "I'm sorry," she said, "but no one deserves to be spoken to like that. Not him, not anyone." The woman blinked. "Excuse me." Emma didn't back down. "You don't get to judge people by what they wear or what they order. And if respect isn't on your menu tonight, maybe this isn't your place." A hush swept across the nearby tables. Then the manager appeared. "Emma," he hissed, "my office now." Daniel stood. He turned to the manager, his voice calm but firm. "She didn't do anything wrong. She saved the evening from becoming a complete disaster." The manager opened his mouth, but Daniel had already left the table. Emma was called to the back, her heart pounding. 10 minutes later, she walked out, unsure of her fate, and saw Daniel waiting outside in the snow, hands in his coat pockets. She approached, guarded. "You okay?" he asked. Emma gave a half shrug. "I'll survive. Probably won't be working here much longer, though." Daniel's expression softened. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that. You didn't deserve it either." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "When I was a kid, I used to wait outside the diner where my mom worked. I heard people talk to her the way that woman talked to you." His eyes met hers. "Thank you for standing up, not just for me, but for what's right." Emma didn't speak right away. She looked at him, this man she thought was just another customer, grateful not for a rescue, but for simple kindness. "Any time," she said quietly, "even if it cost me everything." And for the first time that night, Daniel Archer smiled, a real smile. The night after the disastrous blind date, Emma rode the bus home in silence. Her hands trembled slightly on the railing. Her uniform was still damp from the spilled wine, and the manager's words echoed in her ears, suspended pending review. It wasn't a firing, not yet. But Emma had worked enough service jobs to know what that usually meant. She had stood up for basic decency, and now she might not be able to buy her son's birthday gift. She unlocked the door to her small apartment. Tiny feet ran across the linoleum. "Mommy!" Sam squealed, leaping into her arms in his dinosaur pajamas, a crinkled picture book in hand. "You're home." She held him tight, burying her face in his blonde curls. "You ready for story time, my little stegosaurus?" He nodded eagerly. "The one with the dragon." She read her voice steady, even as her thoughts spun. When Sam finally drifted off, his stuffed turtle tucked under one arm, Emma lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, too tired to cry. But the ache in her chest wouldn't leave. That quiet, familiar ache of almost but not quite getting by. The next morning at the same restaurant, tension pulsed through a quiet conference room. Daniel Archer had returned this time in a tailored wool coat and sharp slacks. His presence shifted the air. He handed the stunned manager a card, Daniel Archer, CEO, Allura Holdings. The manager paled. The regional supervisor seated beside him looked equally startled. "You own the place," Daniel replied calmly. "I came back because what I witnessed last night was unacceptable, not just from a service perspective, but from a human one." He gestured for them to sit. The roles had reversed. The issue with the waitress Emma wasn't about poor judgment. It was the opposite. She was the only one who stood up when something was clearly wrong. The manager swallowed. She raised her voice to a customer. "She defended someone from being humiliated," Daniel countered, "and instead of being praised for courage, she was punished." He let the silence linger. "That speaks to the culture here, and that's what I want to change." The regional manager cleared his throat. "So what do you propose?" Daniel leaned forward. "She should be reinstated immediately. But more than that, I'd like to offer her a new role, Assistant Manager of Staff Development and Training." The two men blinked. Daniel continued, "We need someone who understands what compassion looks like on the floor, who knows what it's like to be in the line of fire and still choose kindness." Later that afternoon, Emma received a call from the restaurant. She assumed it was about paperwork termination, maybe a final paycheck. She didn't expect to walk into the conference room and see him. Daniel stood calmly beside the regional manager. When he saw her, he offered a reassuring smile. "Miss Wells," the manager said, avoiding her eyes, "please have a seat." Emma sat down, nerves twisting. She braced herself. Daniel spoke first. "I know this is unexpected, but I wanted to thank you for last night. You didn't just defend me. You reminded everyone here what integrity looks like." Emma blinked. "I didn't do it for—" "I know," he said gently. "That's why it meant something." He turned to the others. "I've recommended that Emma be reinstated, and more than that, I want her to take on a new position we're creating, Assistant Manager of Staff Development and Training." Emma stared at him. "Wait, what?" Daniel smiled. "It's clear you see people, not just policy. I need that perspective in a leadership role." Emma's heart raced. "But I've never done anything like that." "You've lived it," he said simply. "That's worth more than any training manual." Silence settled over the room. Emma looked down at her hands, then back to Daniel. "Why me?" He met her eyes. There was something quiet and steady in his voice. "Because when you saw someone being treated unfairly, you didn't look away. You spoke up. That's the kind of leadership this place needs." For the first time in a very long time, Emma Wells didn't feel like just another waitress trying to make rent. She felt seen. Emma adjusted the collar of her slightly too big blazer and took a steadying breath before stepping through the back entrance of the restaurant. Her new name tag read, Emma Wells, Assistant Manager of Training and Staff Development. It still didn't feel real. Only 2 weeks had passed since the meeting that changed everything, since Daniel Archer, the man she had defended during a disastrous blind date, revealed he was the CEO and offered her a promotion. The transition wasn't easy. Emma was great with people, but management came with a different kind of pressure. Schedules, training plans, complaints, difficult conversations. Without formal experience, she was learning everything on the fly. She stayed up late watching leadership videos, scribbled notes on Sam's coloring pages, and clung to the staff manual like a lifeline. Most days she wondered if she was in over her head, but someone noticed more than her mistakes. Daniel. He showed up regularly, sometimes checking on operations, sometimes with a quiet, just wanted to stop by. He never hovered or corrected, but his presence always came when she most needed reassurance, like when the schedule software crashed and erased 2 days of work. Emma nearly broke down. Hours later, it was all restored. She glanced at Daniel. "Tech support owed me a favor," he said like it was nothing. He didn't make her feel inadequate. He made her feel like she had someone in her corner. One Thursday evening, while finishing closing tasks, Emma heard soft sneaker squeaks in the hallway. "Sam," she said, startled. Her 3-year-old son stood there, hoodie zipped awkwardly, backpack half falling off. "Miss Lisa said I could see you." He grinned, running into her arms. Lisa, her neighbor, had brought him by. Emma's shift had gone long again. As Emma kissed Sam's cheek, she heard another pair of footsteps. Daniel. He had come for a walkthrough, but the moment Sam saw him, his face lit up. Daniel. Before Emma could stop him, Sam bolted and launched into Daniel's legs. Caught off guard, Daniel caught him midair with practiced ease. "Whoa, hey buddy," he laughed. "You said I could show you my dinosaur backpack." Emma blinked. She didn't remember that promise, but clearly Sam did. Daniel crouched down and let Sam unzip every pocket, explaining the difference between a Triceratops and a Stegosaurus like it was top-secret information. Daniel listened intently, nodding like a CEO being briefed by a junior paleontologist. Emma stood frozen, watching this quiet, surreal moment unfold. Daniel Archer, the man in boardrooms and news articles, was now on the linoleum floor, nodding solemnly over dinosaur stickers. Later, as they walked out into the drizzle of a spring night, Daniel waved to Sam and slipped into the mist without needing thanks or recognition. The next day, it poured. Emma was late, juggling Sam's backpack, his rain boots, her binder, and 2 microwaved oatmeal cups. She forgot the umbrella. By the end of her shift, she was drenched. Her shoes squelched. Her hair clung to her neck in wet curls. She laughed it off as she entered the break room until she saw it, a clean, warm jacket folded neatly on the bench. On top of it, a small note. "Because Sam needs a mom who stays warm, not sick, D." Emma stood still, jacket in her hands, throat tight. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was quiet, thoughtful, and it pierced her deeper than any flowers or flattery ever could. Days later, during a staff training session, Emma stood in front of 10 new hires. Her blazer still didn't fit quite right, and her heels pinched, but her voice was steady. "It's not just about fixing mistakes," she said. "It's about listening. People don't just come here to eat. They come to feel seen." She wasn't flashy or corporate. She was honest, real. Her passion filled the room. At the back, unnoticed by most, Daniel watched. His arms were folded, a soft smile tugging at his lips. He'd admired her strength from day one, but now he saw something else. She wasn't just good at this. She was this compassionate, resilient, unapologetically herself. In a borrowed blazer and scuffed shoes, Emma Wells didn't just lead, she lit up the room. And for the first time in years, Daniel Archer realized he wasn't just impressed. He was falling. It started with a casual dinner after work, then a Saturday at the Children's Museum, then a picnic in the park where Sam spent more time chasing ducks than eating. Daniel became part of their rhythm, not forced, not showy, just there. Every time he appeared, Sam lit up. "Uncle Dan!" he'd yell, launching into his arms. Emma didn't even remember when he stopped being Mr. Daniel. It just happened naturally, like all the best things. Daniel embraced it with ease. To Sam, he was the one who roared like a T-Rex during bedtime stories, who could lift him onto his shoulders so he could touch the clouds, and who always asked about preschool like it was the most important topic in the world. To Emma, he was becoming something else entirely. She tried not to name it, told herself it was gratitude, maybe admiration. But the lines were blurring because Daniel didn't try to impress her. He didn't show up with luxury. He showed up with presence, with space, with listening. He made her feel heard, and she hadn't had that in a very long time. Still, Emma had walls, strong ones. And then came Sam's birthday. It was a sunny Sunday in early spring. Emma had turned the backyard into a child's dream: paper lanterns, dollar store streamers, a fruit tray shaped like a dinosaur. The folding table held hand-piped cupcakes, slightly lopsided, but made with love. Daniel arrived on time carrying a large fire truck-wrapped box. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Big gift?" she teased. He looked sheepish. Might have gone a little overboard. When Sam ripped off the wrapping, he gasped. Inside was a deluxe fire station playset: trucks, hoses, helmets, sirens, the works. Within seconds, Sam was on the patio floor narrating a rescue mission with full dramatic flair. Emma crouched beside Daniel as they watched. "You nailed it," she said. Daniel kept his eyes on Sam, his smile soft. "I just had a feeling." Emma turned to him. "How did you know he liked fire trucks?" He hesitated, then admitted quietly, "I didn't. Not really." He looked down at his coffee cup. "I wanted to be a firefighter when I was his age. I used to cut out toy pictures from catalogs. Once I saw this red fire truck in a shop window. I wanted it so badly. But after my dad died, money was non-existent. My mom worked non-stop just to keep the lights on." He laughed a little. "I never got that truck." Emma was silent, her heart aching. It was the first time he'd let her glimpse the boy behind the man, the loss, the longing, the scrappy kid who grew up too fast. She saw all of it, and something shifted. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for the gift, but for showing me this part of you." Their eyes met. For a moment the party faded into a blur. There was only them. Later that night the lanterns had gone out. The last balloon had popped. Emma stood at the sink, rinsing cupcake trays. Exhaustion wrapped around her like a heavy coat. Daniel had just left, promising to come help clean in the morning. Sam was asleep in bed, tiny fingers wrapped around the smallest fire truck from the set. Emma looked at the clock, then the dark window above the sink, and it hit her. She was falling for him, not slowly, not subtly, fully. She wanted this, wanted him. But then the fear came tight, familiar. Not fear for herself, fear for Sam. She stared at her reflection, the glass fogging with her breath. "I can't let you in," she whispered. Because when love left, it didn't slip away quietly. It shattered everything. And Emma had spent 3 years picking up those pieces for her son, rebuilding calm, rebuilding trust, rebuilding safety. She wouldn't let anyone, even Daniel Archer, risk that peace. Maybe especially not Daniel Archer, because the more he meant to her, the more it would hurt if he left. Emma opened the door, with Sam clinging to her hip, a smear of yogurt on his cheek, and his favorite blanket dragging behind him. Standing on the porch, elegant in a cashmere coat and leather gloves, was Margaret Archer. Emma froze. Sam did too. Margaret gave a cool smile. "I didn't come to make a scene," she said. "May I come in?" Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Sam, go draw Mommy a picture in the kitchen, okay?" Sam obeyed, patting down the hallway. Margaret stepped inside. Her eyes swept the modest living room, a crocheted blanket draped over the couch, crayon drawings taped to the fridge, a faint scent of vanilla and laundry in the air. She remained standing. "I thought we should speak," she said. Woman to woman. Emma crossed her arms gently. "All right." Margaret's tone sharpened. "I know what you think. That I'm just another wealthy woman who looks down on you." Emma said nothing. "But you don't know what it took to get my son here. His father died when he was 6. I cleaned hotel rooms, waited tables, studied at night, worked every damn second to keep him from sleeping in a car." Her voice cracked slightly before she steeled it again. "He built a life where he'd never have to go through what I did, and now he's throwing that away." Emma's voice was calm. "By loving someone who reminds you of who you used to be." Margaret blinked. Emma took a step closer, not aggressive, just real. I'm not ashamed of who I am or of my son. I show up. I protect him. I work hard. If that's not enough for you, so be it." Margaret's lips thinned. "I spent 20 years helping Daniel escape poverty. I won't let someone pull him back." Emma swallowed. Her chest ached, but her gaze didn't waver. "I don't want his money. I've never asked him for anything." She paused. "All I want is for Sam not to be hurt. That's my only concern." Margaret looked away, then without a word turned and walked out the door. That evening Daniel appeared at Emma's doorstep, his eyes blazing. "She had no right," he said. "She told me. I didn't know until after I confronted her." Emma wiped her hands on a dish towel, bracing herself. "What did you say to her?" Daniel's voice softened but stayed intense. "I told her I love you." The words hung in the silence. "And that I won't let her fear control my life anymore." Emma turned away, her eyes glistening. "That's not enough, Daniel," she whispered. "Love isn't enough. Not when it costs someone their mother." "I chose this," he said, stepping closer. "I chose you." She shook her head. "You have a world, the boardrooms, the tailored suits, the legacy. And I have mine, this little apartment, my bills, my kid, and a kind of love that doesn't wear silk." Daniel's voice cracked. "I don't care about that world. I care about you and Sam." Emma met his eyes, steady, clear. "Exactly. That's why I can't let Sam get caught in the middle." She stepped back and reached into her apron pocket. "I gave my notice today." Daniel froze. "You what?" "I resigned before your mother came because I knew eventually someone would remind me I didn't belong, and I couldn't let my son see me stay where I wasn't wanted." Daniel looked devastated. "Emma, please don't do this." She stepped forward, resting her hand over his heart. "You're a good man, but you deserve someone who fits your world without shattering it." Daniel stared at her, his world quietly breaking. Emma closed the door behind him. The knock at the door was soft. Emma opened it slowly, expecting a neighbor or a package, but standing there in a beige coat, no makeup, and no jewelry was Margaret Archer. She didn't ask to come in. She just looked at Emma, then glanced past her into the apartment where Sam sat cross-legged on the rug, humming to himself. He was lining up 2 stuffed animals like an audience and singing softly one of the lullabies Emma used to hum at bedtime. Margaret's gaze softened. "I thought I'd just drop by," she said. Emma hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside. Margaret entered slowly. The apartment was small but warm. A child's crayon drawing labeled "Me and Mommy" was stuck to the fridge. A photo of Emma and Sam at a pumpkin patch sat on the bookshelf. The air smelled of clean laundry and vanilla. It wasn't much, but it felt like love. Margaret paused by the entryway watching Sam stack Legos. He looked up and grinned. "Hi, I remember you," he said. "You're Dan's mommy." Margaret's throat tightened. "Yes, I am." Emma adjusted the blanket on the couch, keeping her eyes down. A long silence stretched between them. Then Margaret spoke, her voice low, no longer cold. "When Daniel was small, we lived above a dry cleaner. The fumes gave him nosebleeds. I cleaned motel rooms during the day and waited tables at night. I used to soak my hands in ice water between shifts so I could keep working." Emma turned surprised. "I remember how he'd curl up beside me when we couldn't afford heat, and I remember promising he'd never grow up like that." Margaret sat on the edge of the couch, smoothing her skirt. "But somewhere along the way, I started pretending like those years never happened. I thought love meant shielding him from everything we'd come from, including people like you." Her voice faltered. "But that wasn't love. That was fear and pride." Emma sat down slowly beside her. Margaret stared straight ahead. "Today I passed a bookstore. There was a boy inside laughing at a fire truck book. His mother looked at him like he just cured cancer, and I realized I hadn't seen Daniel smile like that in years, until he met you." Emma blinked back tears. "Mrs. Archer." Margaret reached into her coat and pulled out a small velvet box. She opened it. Inside lay a delicate gold bracelet, worn but beautiful. 3 tiny rubies gleamed along its band. "This was Daniel's grandmother's," she said. "She gave it to me when I got engaged, said it belonged to the heart of the next generation." She held the box out. "I don't have other children, and I don't want Daniel to marry someone like me, someone who forgot where she came from just to pretend she'd made it." Emma stared at the bracelet, tears welling. Margaret's smile was quiet. "So please," she said, her voice trembling, "take it because I see clearly now. My son has already chosen, and I'm grateful." Later that week, in a hospital room, Daniel lay pale in the hospital bed, his fever finally breaking after days of exhaustion and overwork. Emma sat at his side, gently holding his hand. On the other side, Margaret tucked the blanket around him and smoothed his hair like she had when he was a boy. Daniel stirred, blinking open his eyes. The first thing he saw was both women, his mother and Emma, sitting beside him, peaceful and still. Margaret stood. She leaned down, kissed his forehead, then turned to Emma. "I'll let you take it from here." She paused, hand on Emma's shoulder, and whispered, "He smiles like that because of you. Don't ever stop being the reason." Then she walked out quietly, leaving behind something deeper than approval: acceptance. It was a crisp Sunday morning, the kind where the air smelled clean and hope seemed to linger a little longer than usual. Daniel stood outside the hospital for the first time in a week. A duffel bag slung over one shoulder, his coat wrapped tight against the breeze. His body still felt a little weak, but the weight in his chest, the one he'd carried for years, had somehow lifted. A familiar voice called out, "Dan!" He turned just in time to catch Sam barreling toward him with arms wide and a grin even wider. "Whoa there, buddy!" Daniel laughed, crouching as the little boy crashed into him with all the force of 3-year-old excitement. "Careful, I'm still fragile." "You're not fragile. You're super strong. Mommy said you're a hero." Daniel looked up. Emma stood a few feet away, smiling gently, her blonde hair tucked under a knit beanie. Her eyes sparkled, but there was still a softness behind them, like she was holding herself back. "Hey?" she said. "Hey," he replied. Sam tugged at Daniel's hand. "I made something." He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket, creased, colorful, slightly smudged. Daniel unfolded it and felt his breath catch. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures, one tall, one medium, one small, holding hands under a triangle that said, "Home." The figures were labeled Me, Mommy, and Dan. Daniel's heart squeezed. He looked at Emma. "He calls it our house," she said quietly. "He's been working on it all week." Daniel glanced between them, Emma with her eyes lowered, Sam beaming up at him, and realized this was the moment he'd been searching for his entire life. Without another word, he handed Sam the picture, then slowly reached into his coat pocket. He dropped to one knee. Emma's eyes widened. "Daniel." He held up a small, worn silver ring. Its edges softened by time, its surface scratched and simple. No diamonds, no gold, just silver and memory. "This belonged to my mother," he said softly. "She wore it when we had nothing. She kept it long after we had everything, just to remind herself of who she was." Emma's lips parted, but no words came. Daniel continued, his voice steady despite the trembling in his chest. "You walked into my life like someone opening a door I didn't know had been locked. You didn't ask for anything, you didn't expect anything, and yet you gave me everything." He took a breath. "You've stood by me without ever needing to prove yourself. You made my past bearable by choosing to walk with me through it, even when it wasn't yours to carry." He looked down for a moment, then up again, his eyes filled with quiet awe. "I don't need diamonds. I don't need promises etched in stone. I just need you and Sam and that little drawing. That's more than enough to build a life on." He held the ring up. "Emma Harper, will you marry me?" Emma's hand came up to cover her mouth, her eyes filling instantly with tears. Sam looked up at her, confused. "Mommy, are you okay?" Emma laughed through her tears, nodding. "Yeah, baby, I'm okay." She stepped forward, dropping to her knees in front of Daniel. Her hands cupped his face and she kissed him softly, surely as if sealing a promise she didn't need words to make. Then she nodded again. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 100 times. Yes." Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting all these years. Sam clapped, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Does this mean we're a family now?" Daniel pulled him into the hug. "We already are, buddy," he said. "We already are." The backyard smelled of wildflowers and lemon cake. Sunlight filtered softly through the leaves of the old oak tree, casting dappled shadows over the simple wooden arch Emma and Sam had helped decorate with white ribbon and daisies picked from the nearby field. There were no chandeliers, no designer gowns, no orchestra, just laughter, clinking glasses, and the quiet buzz of love. Emma stood barefoot on the soft grass, a flowy cream dress falling just past her knees, her blonde hair loosely pinned with baby's breath. Her eyes shimmered with emotion as she watched Daniel walk down the narrow aisle with Sam by his side. Sam, in a tiny gray vest and bow tie, held the velvet ring pillow like it was made of gold. He beamed with a seriousness far beyond his 3 years. "I'm the ring boy," he had declared proudly to every guest, all 20 of them. Daniel reached the front turn to face Emma, and for a moment neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. The officiant cleared her throat gently. "Shall we begin?" They exchanged vows with voices that trembled slightly, not from nerves but from the weight of everything they had overcome to be here. Emma looked at Daniel as she spoke. "I never imagined love would come quietly dressed in patience and steadiness. You walked into my chaos and didn't try to fix it. You simply stayed. That changed everything." Daniel's hand tightened around hers. "And you," he said softly, "taught me that strength isn't about building walls, but about having the courage to open a door. You're the home I didn't know I was missing." When the rings were exchanged, Sam delivering them with great care and pride, there was a collective breath held. Then, with a gentle nod from the officiant, they kissed. Applause rang out, but Daniel and Emma hardly noticed. The world had narrowed to the space between them. Later, after the guests had gone and the paper lanterns above the yard began to flicker in the dusk, Daniel and Emma sat on the wooden steps of the porch. Sam was curled up between them, already fast asleep, his head resting on Daniel's shoulder, a half-eaten cookie still clutched in his hand. Emma leaned her head against Daniel's. "Think we did okay today?" she whispered. Daniel chuckled softly. "I think the ring boy stole the show." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the quiet rustle of leaves, the occasional chirp of a cricket, and the soft breathing of the boy they both loved. Then Daniel turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You know," he said quietly, "you didn't just save me from a disastrous blind date." Emma smiled, her eyes still closed. "No." He shook his head slowly, his voice barely more than a breath. "You saved me from a life that looked full on the outside but was empty inside. You saved me from pretending, from loneliness, dressed up in boardrooms and briefcases. You gave me something real. You gave me this." Emma opened her eyes, and in that moment, with twilight wrapping around them like a blanket and their son fast asleep between them, she knew this wasn't just the end of a love story. It was the beginning of the kind of life she'd once thought was impossible, quiet, ordinary, imperfect, and completely beautiful. She kissed his shoulder, then whispered back, "And you gave me the one thing I didn't even know I needed, someone who sees all of me, and stays." The porch light above them flickered on as night finally settled, but their hearts were already lit from within. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button to support soul-stirring stories. We believe in second chances, quiet courage and love that shows up when we least expect it. Your support helps us keep telling the kind of stories that remind us, even on the hardest days, connection can change everything. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep believing in the magic of the human heart. Soul-stirring stories, where every story touches a soul. music.